I was sitting in church one night and we were having our sharing circle, and we were singing a song. I think it was Amazing Grace. And we were remembering how God has freed us from so many things. And everyone in the circle was preparing to share what was going on in their lives. And it was a quiet night, and we were expectant of what God was going to do. And we heard the door open, and often in our church, people come in late, but this was a different late. There was a scream, and there was a call for help. And so I went to the door so the sharing circle could continue. And at the door, there was a mom who had a fresh scar above her right eye. I could see that she had been running, and her kids were running behind her. She had 3 of her kids and one of her sister's kids with her. And she said that she needed our help. And so I didn't know exactly what was going on. And so we went into the office to talk. As we were going into the office, her partner came in the door, and everything changed. As he was angry, he was belligerent, and I could tell quickly what was going on. And so I got her into the office, and I got the kids into the office, and I began to ask questions about what was going on. I can't share the young lady's name, but it isn't the first time that we've seen domestic abuse in her life. And it's not the first time that we'd seen this man come into the church angry. When I went out of the office after talking to this young lady, he had calmed down considerably, but she had told me that he had made the scar above her head, the gash, and he had been also violent with the kids. And so I politely asked him to leave, in which he did not want to, but we managed to talk him into going. And so we quickly decided to try to get the family to a safe place. And so we all hopped into my car. There was 6 kids and the mom, 1 car seat into a truck that holds 5. And you begin to wonder what's really important in life. What can you do for families that are struggling? What can you do as a church and as a pastor for families that are authentically struggling with life? A month prior, Vicky had been free from a lot of the addictions that had plagued her life. And so we had been talking about how she would be soon prepared to go back to her hometown and be able to reach her neighborhoods and reach her community, because that's what in her heart she really wanted to do. She had felt the transformation of belonging to the family of Jesus and following him and feeling his presence and knowing that she was a new creation, somebody that was being transformed. And yet, as she went through life, it was a struggle and it was hard for her. Back to getting the kids to a safe place. Drove to the first house where we thought there would be space for them, but unfortunately there was a meth party happening there, and we couldn't go in. That was not a safe place for the kids. We'd driven all the way across town. During the trip, we tried to make it fun for the kids. So we stopped at a 7-Eleven and we played some games, and we played hide and seek around a 7-Eleven in -40. Just trying to make their life a bit normal, regular, feeling safe, feeling like God is with us and God is here for us. After the first place, we went to the second home where her sister was supposed to be, and where we had hoped would be also a safe place, but she wasn't home. And so we sent one of the kids through the window. It was a first-story window, because they knew how to get into the house, and they knew how to open the door, and they knew if she wasn't home that they could find safety in this home. We got the family in and we got everybody settled down, and that's when Vicky phoned her sister, and we realized that she was in St. Boniface Hospital. Her liver had shut down. We now learned that both of them had struggled this last week with their addictions and with their deep-seated hurts not knowing how to handle the pain of life, temptations being strong in the North End. And so her sister was on intravenous. We went to visit the next day, or I went to visit the next day, and I heard the next story that breaks your heart, which is during the last slide of 5 days for her sister, as she began to drink again. 2 of the last days, she was in such pain that we found out that her liver was actually shutting down. But because of the pain of life, she could not stop. And so she continued to drink until it was so bad that an ambulance picked her up. And that's why the first sister had the kids, but she didn't remember that. I tell this story because it's important for us to realize that not every story ends with the victory that we so hope to see when people follow Jesus. I'd seen victory in both of these sisters' lives many times. I'd seen freedom in both of their lives many times. And yet, once again, I saw life sort of crumble in on them and the pain of the past catch up. It makes me wonder how we can help people who are from a different place than many of us are, that are facing different challenges than many of us face. What can we do as a community to remind them that they are in fact new creations and that God has this fantastic plan for them when life seems to be falling apart? I'd like to tell you that now they're back in church and that everything is fine. But the story is that the kids are back in care and they're in CFS. And one sister is back in programs and she's doing better, but the other sister, we're not sure where she is. And so I ask you to pray for both. The story is important for us to hear and to realize that there is much for us to do with the least of these, with those that Christ calls us to that may not end in a victory. On this side anyways. Both sisters have a relationship with Christ. Both sisters have felt God's presence in their life, and both have wanted to serve him. Both have felt called to be missionaries to their home reserves. What can we as the church do? What can we as ministers do? What can we as lay people of our communities do to help those less fortunate than us, that come from a different background, from a different upraising, from a different way of life? Jesus is bigger than our misconceptions of who he is. As we work with First Nations people, their idea of who the church is and who God is very different from what we hope to bring them in today's day and age. A Jesus that loves them and accepts them for who they are. A Jesus who embraces their culture and embraces them as people. Jesus is bigger than what's happened in the past. Jesus is bigger than the racism that they have felt, that they have experienced, and that we all experience in Canada. Jesus can overcome our differences if we allow him to work in our lives and through us. If we trust the transformation in our own lives and the transformation power of the Holy Spirit, we know that racism is something that Jesus can overcome. In my own life, I am learning that I don't even understand the depth in which Canadians have faced racism and how I have allowed it to be in my life. Jesus is bigger than that. Jesus is greater than that. I believe Jesus is on the move in the prairies, that Jesus has decided that he wants to move aside the misconceptions of racism, that he doesn't want people oppressed, and that he wants to clear the air and paint a new picture of what he has for us as people. Not as settlers and not as First Nations, but as people who can live together and share the land together. Our only hope is Jesus. He is greater.